Well, we'll go ahead and get started with the introductions. Well, thank you all for being with us tonight. I'm Maria Sanchez Tucker, and I'm the director of the Santa Fe Public Library. And I'm really excited to have Gustavo Arellano here as he discusses the cuisine of New Mexico. This program is part of the NEA Big Read Santa Fe. The NEA Big Read is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. I hope that you've had the opportunity to read the NEA Big Read book this year, Into the Beautiful North by Luis Urrea. We still have Big Read programs in May, so please check santafelibrary.org's event calendar for more information on upcoming events. We still have a poetry contest and an art contest available for you to participate in. Tomorrow there's a book discussion, and we have a poetry writing workshop next week. So there's a lot of great events still upcoming. I'd like to thank our NEA Big Read sponsors for making tonight's events possible. Thanks to the Friends of the Santa Fe Public Library, Sally Bingham, City of Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department, and the Santa Fe New Mexican. And special thanks to the Santa Fe New Mexican for broadcasting our event this evening. So I'm really honored and excited to introduce our speaker tonight. Gustavo Arellano is author of Orange County, A Personal History, and Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America. A features writer for the Los Angeles Times, and he has been an essayist and reporter for various publications, and a frequent commenter on radio and television. He was formerly editor of OC Weekly, an alternative newspaper in Orange County, California, and penned the award-winning Ask a Mexican, a nationally syndicated column in which he answered any and all questions about America's spiciest and largest minority. Gustavo is the recipient of awards ranging from the Association of Alternative News Weeklies Best Columnist to the Los Angeles Press Club's President Award, to an Impact Award from the National Hispanic Media Coalition. And he was recognized by the California Latino Legislative Caucus with a 2008 Spirit Award for his exceptional vision, creativity, and work ethic. Gustavo is a lifelong resident of Orange County and is the proud son of two Mexican immigrants, one of whom came to this country in the trunk of a Chevy. So Gustavo, thank you for joining us virtually in Santa Fe this evening. We wish you were here with us personally so you can partake in the delicious New Mexican food, but I promise I'll send some chili your way soon.
I can't wait.
Thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you all. Thank you all. I mean, I get it. It's better to be in person, but look at this. We have 144 people tuning in from all across the United States, from Moore Park. Here on the chat side, please shout out where you're from. I might shout you out or whatever. So I am Gustavo Arellano. I'm a columnist for Los Angeles Times. Obviously, I'm also the host of a new podcast called The Times. What was that? Times Daily News from the LA Times. It's basically the world through the eyes of the West Coast, or really through the eyes of the West. We actually plan to have episodes based in New Mexico, so stay tuned. There's a Costa Mesa person, Dallas, Rob Martinez, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, hometown, Newport Beach. Wow, Santa Fe, but originally from the Midwest. You see, it's all cool. So this is obviously very informal. I love these Zooms because we could interact with each other this way and that way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lecture about the history of New Mexican food, especially for people who are those who are from New Mexico. You probably know most of this, but it's good to get a reminder of what your amazing cuisine's about. Those of you who just visit New Mexico every once in a while, we'll give you the full history. And those of you who have never been to New Mexico before, behold to learn, and more importantly, wait. My goal is to make you hungry and to make you eventually come to the Land of Enchantment and just eat as much as possible. How on earth does someone from Orange County, California, like myself, know so much about New Mexican food? Well, I wrote a book, Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America. Came out in 2012, so it's almost a decade old, but it's still being sold. God bless the insatiable consumption, the insatiable hunger that Americans have for Mexican food, and now increasingly Mexican food history. So just a really quick plug about the book. Ask a Mexican's exactly what, Ask a Mexican, that's a whole other book. Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America. It's exactly what it sounds like. I've written 3 books and I love titles, just tell you what it is exactly. So every chapter roughly corresponds to a decade in the development of Mexican food in the United States. And of course, I have can you order the book from Barnes & Noble? Yes, you can, but it's better if you support local independent bookstores. There is a bookstore in Santa Fe that I've actually read at a couple of times. It's not the tattered cover because that's the one. Collected Works in downtown Santa Fe. Please patronize that as well. If you're in Albuquerque, Bookworks is another amazing bookstore. A lot of these bookstores now have online websites. So please support independent bookstores because they especially need the money more than ever. But there's an entire chapter devoted to the cuisine of, really it's New Mexico. I say the American Southwest, but that's what we're going to go through. And just in case you think, oh, I'm just a wannabe expert, just, did something for the money or whatever. No, my wife and I were true New Mexico enthusiasts. Before the pandemic hit, we would spend a couple of days every single year in New Mexico, make our home base of Albuquerque, go up to Chimayo, swing down south for these, of course, hatch chili. I just got them from the freezer, so nice frozen hatch chilies, and pick up a whole bunch of stuff along the way because we love New Mexico. And so this is actually from the Owl and the Octopus, this cool independent store in Albuquerque. Just like little, how New Mexico are we? Here's holy dirt from El Santuario de Chimayo. That's, of course, El Santo Niño de Atocha, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So I'm just going to show you all my New Mexico goodies. My wife, in fact, some of them, not all of them, are New Mexico goodies. My wife, in fact, was so inspired by New Mexico that she has a market and deli in Orange County called Alta Baja Market, where she sells a lot of stuff from New Mexico. Like this amazing prickly pear cactus jelly from Santa Fe Seasons, which we always pick up in Albuquerque for some reason. There's that. This is really good. Some spicy potato mix, also from Santa Fe Seasons. This is an actually really good seasoning, Pear sea salt from Chimayo Heritage, also from Albuquerque as well. This one, if you've never been to Los Poblanos, this amazing lavender farm in Albuquerque. I think it's Rio Rancho to be specific, but right next to Albuquerque. This is absolutely amazing. Of course, nothing beats actual piñones. These are green chili piñones from Grants. Oh, no, from Gallup, not from Grants, from Gallup right there. This is absolutely amazing. And of course, since all of you are at home and none of you are driving, we all got a drink, right? So this is actually a liqueur from Santa Fe Spirits that I bought years ago. And I believe the liquor store is called Restoration in Albuquerque, but it's a really great liquor store in Albuquerque. So please, I'm going to pour myself this one, and I want you all to pour yourself one at home, and we'll start with our lecture. Salud to an amazing state, to an amazing people. May we see each other very soon in person, all vaccinated, of course. And meanwhile, got to wear a mask. So salud a todos. I'm not going to drink it all. It's going to be sipping. I don't want to get too drunk for this, of course. Ooh, it's nice and sweet. It's piñón, ponderosa, and oak. Oh, then you get the piñón flavor at the very end. Is absolutely amazing. Lisa says I have two bottles of green chili wine from Hatch. Salud. Perfect. Los Ranchos. Thank you, Robert, for correcting me. Obviously, I'm a California guy, not a New Mexico guy. But at least you should be proud of me that I even put in the rancho or ranchos or something like that, right? So anyways, the New Mexican cuisine. Americans have always been fascinated by it, not obsessed with it the way they have with Mexican food. Mexican food, of course, has become a phenomenon, and it's all across the country. But with New Mexican cuisine, it's really interesting because during the 1980s, there was this moment where the Southwestern cuisine movement really started spreading across the country. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to use a chipotle, which of course is a Mexican spice, but because of Mark Miller at Coyote Cafe, the former owner of Coyote Cafe, he made this poster called the Great Chili Poster, and the Chimayo, not the Chimayo, the chipotle pepper all of a sudden became a thing. But also Southwestern flavors like piñón, like green chili, like even red chili. People like John Sedler, like it became a movement. All of a sudden, people started incorporating names like Santa Fe, like Chimayo, like ABQ into their restaurants. And we're talking about, like, you want to know funny, there used to be a restaurant in here in Orange County, in Huntington Beach, on the coast, called Chimayo at the Beach. And if you've ever been to Chimayo, it's not nowhere near the beach. It's a beautiful town, don't get me wrong, but it's not nowhere near the beach. But after the 1980s, really, the influence of New Mexican cuisine on the rest of the United States mostly disappeared. Over the past couple of years, you've had some chefs trying to bring back hatch chilies, and hatch chilies, of course, are very amazing. Hatch, of course, if you've never been to New Mexico, it's all the way in the south, close. Like on the way to El Paso, you just go off a little side street right there, on the way to Las Cruces specifically. But still, like New Mexican cuisine had its moment and then went. And why is that? Why is it that New Mexican cuisine really truly didn't take off in the rest of the United States? What I would argue is that the cuisine of New Mexico is there's so many layers to it, and it's such a complex flavor profile, but also history, that the rest of Americans didn't get it. They're like, this isn't just nachos and chilies. Like, you're actually giving me history here. I don't need that. But that's I think that's all credit to you New Mexicans, because if you need to eat the food of New Mexico, you need to actually go to New Mexico as opposed to be waiting. So now a little bit of history, and I'm going to give you a little bit of history now. New Mexican cuisine. You cannot start New Mexican cuisine without, of course, the natives folks who were here since time immemorial. The people who brought some of the cornerstones of New Mexican cuisine, basically, or most importantly, the three sisters: corn, squash, and beans. And the Three Sisters program is in Mexico. We don't call it the Three Sisters, we call it La Milpa system, but you basically have these plants that give you sustenance and also complement each other. Now, I love to garden, we love to garden, but I forget all the botany involved. I think it's the beans give nitrogen to the soil, and then the squash gives cover to the beans so they could grow, and then the beans start growing on the corn stalk or whatever. But anyways, that was a cuisine that the main cuisine that Native Americans were eating when the Spaniards came in and try to do their mess, try to settle Spain, or rather New Spain, whatnot. That's a whole other lecture. What does it mean with the Spaniards or whatnot? For the purposes of this, the Spaniards came in, they adopted the Three Sisters program, and they also adopted something that's essential to the New Mexican identity: chili. Now, there's debate. Most people say that it was the Spaniards who, and really Mexicans, because they were born in Mexico at that point. But don't tell that to some of the Spaniards or the Hispanos, right? That it was the Spaniards who brought up chile from Mexico into New Mexico and introduced it to the people who lived here already. Other people maintain that actually chili was already here. How did corn started in Mexico? Corn obviously became the food of the First Nations all across, through the Southeast or whatever. So there's also that theory as well. The point is that the Spaniards and the native tribes, they embraced the chili. The Spaniards also brought something very important to the New Mexican mind, mainly meat. And beef, of course, is a thing, but in my opinion, the two animals, or two livestock that are most important to the New Mexican stomach is going to be pork, and it's going to be lamb. Lamb, you don't see it as much anymore. Borrego, mutton or whatever. I know you still have it up in northern New Mexico, like around Española, Chimayo. You have lamb chicharrones. I forget the name of this restaurant, Española, and I know one of you will correct me on it, but they still serve lamb chicharrones, which are absolutely amazing. But the pork itself, it is just like the cornerstone of the New Mexican diet. Because with pork, what you would do, you would just grow them all year, fatten them all year. And porks, pigs are pretty much harder than cattle. Cattle tend to be a little, they need a lot of grazing, all that stuff. With the pork, you just put them in the pen, you give them their food, you fatten them, and then every winter you slaughter them. And I'm going to show you really quickly. My wife loves New Mexican food so much. It's going to be a very bad visual, but this is right here, the quintessential New Mexican preparation of pork, carne adobada. She makes a sandwich of carne adobada. She puts it in quesadillas, and she also makes it into a salad. Now, it wasn't La Paragua, Roxy. It was another one, very sort of cabrito as well, exactly. But I'll think about it in a little bit. So carne adobada is going to be pork, kind of like shredded pork. Angelina's, thank you, Catherine. That's Angelina's, the great new Española restaurant that serves lamb chicharrones. Carne adobada is going to be kind of like shredded pork, so it's going to be pork, fine, but it's made, or rather, it's cooked with spices from chili from New Mexico. If you're in northern New Mexico, it's going to be Chimayo chili. We'll get to the chili wars later on, but so traditionally, then Hispanos, the Spaniards and the people who lived in New Mexico, once pork was introduced, they started, doing every single year, raise their pigs, and then they would kill them in essentially ceremonies called matanzas. Ooh, it's gonna hit me now. It's kind of spicy. And matanza basically means killings. And so what would happen, all these communities would get together, slaughter their pigs, and prepare the whole hog treatment. So they would use the blood, they would use the bristles to do their things, they would use the lard, of course. And the matanza celebration, it still happens in New Mexico, although of course it's been disappearing just as New Mexico gets less and less rural. But I did a story for the Los Angeles Times. I'm going to share this on the chat right here about the big matanza at the world's largest matanza that they hold in Belen, so sort of the south central portion of the state. I'm going to post it right here. Oh no, Angelina's permanently closed. That's unfortunate. Well, it was great while it lasted. So when you have a chance, check out the story that I did about the matanzas of New Mexico, the world's largest matanza in 2019. Basically now you get 40 teams, and they competed against each other for matanzas, but they basically do what their ancestors have been passing along to them for generations and generations. Prepare the pig, make great carne adobada and whatnot. It was a wonderful experience, although it was cold. I'm from Southern California. I'm not used to getting up at 4 in the morning in 21-degree weather. The poor team that allowed me to hang out with them, they gave me gloves, and then they told me, like, you shouldn't wear, like, if you shouldn't be using a pen in freezing weather, you should have brought a pencil. But I realized that if I dab it on my tongue, I was able to write. But the matanza tradition, it's basically unchanged for centuries in New Mexico. And from that lard, you start getting all these different, all these dishes that make the New Mexican diet. I said a carne adobada. You get from the lard the famous Christmas cookies, bizcochitos, which have it's like a shortbread cookie. So you have lard, star anise. Oh my God, it is so freaking good. I have a friend of ours, her family's from New Mexico. So every winter, for Christmas, her sister makes these bizcochitos for us because she knows that we're one of the few people who truly appreciate it. And it's absolutely amazing. Gotta get a little bit more of that, of course. But in those early centuries, we're talking about the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, you start getting the roots of New Mexican cuisine. One of course, sorry, I get very excited, so sometimes I have to stop myself. But of course, the quintessential nut of New Mexico, some people sometimes think pecans. In southern New Mexico, you have a lot of pecan farms, especially around the Mesilla Valley. But really, it's the piñón. Everyone loves a piñón. So the piñón started getting incorporated into the New Mexican diet. Everything just starts forming with itself. Tamales, of course, are become a thing. With the introduction of flour and lard, you also get sopapillas. And sopapillas, if you never had them, how to explain them? It's basically a fried triangle of dough. They could be sweet or they could be savory. I personally like them savory. I know, like in most New Mexican restaurants, people eat them for dessert. They get you have the little jar of honey right there, a little squeeze bottle of honey, and you put it there. And it's good, don't get me wrong, but I think with savory mixed in with carne molida, a ground beef or carne adobada, it is an absolutely wonderful experience. And then you put the chili on it. Also, keep mentioning chili. As the centuries start coming, start going 18th, 19th century, and you start having people, Lisa, like the piñón picking is a tradition for New Mexicans, and one that I hope to be at when we're safe, hopefully by the fall, when it's piñón harvesting season. As people start settling across different parts of New Mexico, going down south to Hatch, going up to Chimayo, and Socorro, around Albuquerque, start tapping into the Rio Grande and start getting these farms, one of the things that starts developing are different styles of chile. So when we talk about chile, we're still, we're talking about the big pepper, just a big pepper, fleshy. When you grow it, when it's not ripe, it's green. You call it green chili. When you let it go all the way, it's called red chili. So that's always a big debate among New Mexicans or fans of New Mexican cuisine. What do you like more, red chili or green chili? And of course, we all know the real answer is Christmas, both of them. There'll be fights, there'll be fist fights with people who will go between red and green. Me personally, I like green because I just think it has more of a piquant, not spicy, but like a piquant flavor. It has a fresher flavor. The red though, like if you sometimes want just a deep flavor, like on your stacked enchiladas, and of course the the enchiladas from New Mexico are different because they come stacked instead of rolled, then you have to go with the red. But honestly, even with the red chili, I'm gonna put it in ¿cómo se dice? In the enchiladas, or the green chili with the red chili. Another food that starts popping up, of course, pozole. When you have corn, you have hominy. Hominy is just going to be bigger kernels of pozole. In New Mexico, because you have so much pork, pozole historically comes with pork. But in New Mexico, this goes back to the old roots of the old Spanish that was spoken, that's still spoken in New Mexico. Pozole in Mexico is with a Z. Pozole in Nuevo Mexico is going to be with an S. So all these different dishes, and especially with the chili, I'm going to post another article that you folks should read. Chili, I cannot overemphasize how important chili is to the New Mexican mindset. Chili is everywhere. So a couple years ago, I did an article, here. Why choose a favorite, someone says. Yeah, lamb ribs too, Catherine, totally. In 2019, I did an article for eater.com. It's an online only food publication, but I traveled the Great American Chili Highway from, and you all know what it is, I-25 from Las Cruces, from Cruces all the way up to Denver. I everything along the way. I ate I'm just gonna read you really quickly all the different things that I ate, just so you folks get a sense of just the diversity of when we talk about chili. It's not just the pepper is the base, actual chili pepper is the base, but chili manifests itself in so many different ways. So in Las Cruces, New Mexico, I ate a green chili sundae at Caliche's frozen custard, which is absolutely amazing. At Sandra's New Mexico restaurant in Belen, amazing pozole with the chili more like a gravy that you would put in. Alejandro's Cafe in also in Belen, I had just a beef burrito smothered in green chili, because New Mexico, of course, has their own burritos. I love the chain Burritos al Instante in Albuquerque. I don't know if there's one in Santa Fe, but smothered basically means you put this chili gravy and you put it on top of it. San Antonio Crane in San Antonio, of course. Awesome. What did I have there? Oh, that's where I had the first of many green chili cheeseburgers. So the most famous, the In-N-Out. Like if you're in California, everyone loves In-N-Out. Well, a better restaurant, a better hamburger chain is Blake's Slaughterburger in New Mexico, which is famous for its green chili cheeseburger. So just a cheeseburger chopped up with green chili, and they put it in, and it's absolutely amazing. I also love, Blake's Slaughterburger is so amazing that they also have carne adobada breakfast burritos, and they are freaking good. Go down to Las Cruces, go to La Nueva Casita Cafe, where you have huevos compuestos, and huevos compuestos is basically going to be like a little, almost like a taco salad, not a Donald Trump taco salad, but little tostada shells. You have the carne adobada, and then you put the eggs any style, and then you drizzle even more chili. I went up to Truth or Consequences, green chili Philly cheesesteak. I went to Area Cafe, also has a very good cheeseburger as well. Another amazing place, El Camino Family Restaurant in Socorro. Excuse me. sorry. El Camino, it's this old 50s diner with a total dive bar. I think it's called Conquistador Lounge or whatever. That's where I had Frito pie. Frito pie was actually invented. I know for some of you New Mexicans, you claim it as your own, and it is, it's part of who you are, sure. But let's be real. Elmer Doolin, the founder of Frito-Lay, he didn't invent Fritos, but the founder of Frito-Lay, he's the one who invented Frito pie. It's in his cookbooks. But New Mexicans embrace it more than Texans ever did. So never go, oh my God, Tani says Blake's Bizcochitos shake is next level. I have to have that shake. I always get the peach and blueberry shakes. Oh my God, I got to get back to New Mexico. So all this food, and we haven't even hit into the quote unquote, into the 20th century. All these foods, all these different styles of chili. And of course, you have the different debates. Is Hatch better than Chimayo? Or is it Socorro? Or is it Lemitar? Or is it San Antonio? Like all these different regions that grew chili had their own different styles of chili. You also have the New Mexico State, which I forget what the old name was for New Mexico State, but they started getting a chili institute to start developing these chilies. And the national media is paying attention. Now, the national media and also the bohemians, the artist type, they start coming to New Mexico, of course, to Santa Fe. We all know, Lujan, Mabel Lujan, and Georgia O'Keeffe, and who's D.H. Lawrence, all these famous people. But for me, I think going to, Peter says, is it going to be transcribed? Sorry, you just got to listen to it again. I know I talk fast, but it's enthusiasm. One of the important people for New Mexico, when in terms of popularizing and mythologizing New Mexico, was a writer named Charles Fletcher Lummis. And Charles Fletcher Lummis is pretty forgotten nowadays, but I devote a chapter to him in my, not a full chapter, but I talk about him in my book because he helped popularize, he helped promote New Mexico to the rest of the United States. He ended up settling in California. You want to talk about a job. He ended up actually getting hired by my publication, the Los Angeles Times, the publication that I work for. And the editor at the time said, hey, you want a job? Walk from Ohio, where he was from, walk and write about, write about your travels. And then eventually, when you get here, I'll give you a job. So he wrote all these dispatches with Charles Fletcher Lummis. When he first tried New Mexican food, he tried tortillas and the chile, and his mouth just caught on fire and he didn't really like it. But something stuck with him. And so he would go to New Mexico multiple times and write multiple books. So I'm going to read a quote from you. And, not all of it was positive. He was romanticizing. He was making New Mexico into being like this lost civilization. And I'm going to read you this quote from a book that he wrote in 1893 called Land of Poco Tiempo. Quote, "It is a great American mystery, the national Rip Van Winkle, the United States, which is not United States. Why hurry with the hurrying world? The pretty soon of New Spain is better than the now of the haggard states." So in his own patronizing way, he was saying New Mexico is better than the United States, but for him, it's because those Nuevo Mexicanos, they live easy. They don't have any issues. It's like, kick it. And it's interesting because that mentality, I mean, it's in the nickname right there, the Land of Enchantment. That's what still draws snowbirds. That's what still draws people. We want to go to, at least in New Mexico, and Santa Fe, I know this is your nickname, the city different. Like we want to see something that connects all these centuries, millennia, and try to bring into the present day. There it is, Aaron, New Mexico State University. Yeah, there you go. So all of this, but back in the days, New Mexico is still pretty remote with the rest of the United States. I mean, New Mexico doesn't even become a state until 1912, if memory serves me correct. Those, before Alaska and Hawaii, the last two before those were Arizona and New Mexico. And because of that isolation, then you still have all these food traditions kept. People are, doing the matanzas, eating the bizcochito, growing their chiles. Everything is, sort of set. Everything starts changing though, once you start getting quote unquote modernity into New Mexico. In my book, I cite a study from as early as the 1940s. I don't know if it was University of New Mexico, but there were these social scientists that were tracking how Hispanos were letting go of their food traditions in favor of like canned goods. So instead of growing cows for milk or raising cows for milk, they were going to the canned milk. They were going to instead of eating flour tortillas, making flour tortillas, they were eating bread. They were eating white bread and all of that. So as a result, you start having these women create their own societies and start, writing about New Mexican food, writing about these recipes and keeping these recipes so they would not disappear. I actually have a copy from New Mexico State. It's like a 1903 collection of New Mexican recipes. And it was a white woman who wrote it, but still it's an invaluable source. It's somewhere in my archives. But probably, and there's a couple of different people who write about New Mexican food. One of them has a library, if memory serves me correct, in Santa Fe called Erna Ferguson. Otra Americana. The Americanas are always so fascinated with New Mexico, with New Mexican food. But the predominant or the preeminent Hispana scholar and chronicler of New Mexican foodways is a woman by the name of Fabiola Cabeza de Vaca Gilbert, or Fabiola Gilbert Cabeza de Vaca. Sorry, I haven't spoken in a while about this, but it's good that I know it. So Fabiola Cabeza de Vaca comes from a family. I mean, the greatest last name of all time. Am I right? Cabeza de Vaca, cow's head. Something dating all the way back to Spain. Just such an amazing name that still exists in New Mexico. It's a quick aside. I'm always fascinated by the different manifestations of Cabeza de Vaca. Some people call themselves Si de Vaca or Cabeza de, or all with an apostrophe, with a period, like all sorts of different amazing manifestations of Cabeza de Vaca. But Fabiola writes about New Mexican traditions. Her best book, in my opinion, is We Fed Them Cactus. It's her memoir of being on Route 66. of how Route 66 crossed her family farm and or her family's land holdings, and she would set up a stall, so like a food stall, so she could be able to sell stuff from them. But this is where you start getting, the recipes for the flour tortilla of New Mexico, which is thicker than other places where flour tortillas are. It's different from the Texas version, different from the New Mexican version. You start slowly, as the years start coming in and you start getting more Americans, that's when you start seeing New Mexican food change a little bit again. Of course, the most famous one, the green chili cheeseburger. Lore has it that the Al Cafe in San Antonio invented the green chili cheeseburger. Even more lore, supposedly, because the scientists with the Alamo Project, or the Manhattan Project in Los Alamos, that's where they would go to eat their chili afterwards or whatnot. Their chicos, of course. We'll get to your questions a little bit, folks. And yeah, please have these conversations. Obviously, Robert knows his stuff, which is absolutely awesome. You want to, and you're talking about chicos. You don't really see, Fabiola Cabeza de Vaca Gilbert, or Gilbert Cabeza de Vaca, her book doesn't really travel national. It's more like in New Mexico. Mentions of New Mexican food are few and far in between. Best green chili cheeseburger. A very interesting place where I found mention of New Mexican food is in the columns of Ernie Pyle. Ernie Pyle was a legendary World War II columnist. And in one column, he's like, if you read any of Ernie Pyle's books or columns, he'd always be hanging out, not with the generals, but with the grunts, the soldiers on the front lines. So in one of them, he actually interviews, he hangs out with soldiers from New Mexico, and they mention that he would, Ernie mentions that they had dried chicos with them. This is how important the food is. They didn't have any chile, sadly, or bizcochitos, but they had the dried chili or the dried chicos with them. And chicos are basically, small corn kernels. My wife also sells them as well. But you start seeing the green chili cheeseburger spreading across New Mexico in the 1950s with the rise of Blake's Lotaburger, which is a huge, huge chain. It's like, 80 some restaurants. I think there's now some in El Paso. I wish it would come to some in, I wish there was a Blake's Lotaburger in New Mexico, or rather in New Mexico, in California, but we can't appreciate what's going on in New Mexico, And so the green chili cheeseburger slowly starts spreading, but still you don't start getting, again, New Mexican cuisine still just remains a New Mexican thing. So the blue corn tortillas don't really travel outside of New Mexico. The bizcochitos, the carne adobada, it all stays in there. You don't even see much national media coming in, but things slowly start to change. The first important, event where New Mexican food becomes a national thing in a totally unforeseen way, Jesus appears on a tortilla. So I'm sure you've heard the cliche, the joke, oh yeah, Jesus's face appeared in a tortilla. Well, it actually happened, and it happened in New Mexico, in a tiny town, all near Artesia, Artesia, or however you folks pronounce it. So it would be like southeast New Mexico, more towards the Panhandle, Lake Arthur, New Mexico. We're getting to Anthony Bourdain. You got to let me tell the full narrative, the chronicles, the chronology, Stuart. But I appreciate your enthusiasm. Late 1970s, a woman, last name Rubio, she's making flour tortillas for her family, and she sees a flour tortilla and it has a burn mark, and it looks just like Jesus's face. She goes and shows it to her family. They all agree it's true. They try to go find the priest. He's not there, but by the time the priest comes, there's already a shrine. They created a shrine to Jesus on a flour tortilla in the backyard in Lake Arthur. Pilgrims start coming around. Then she appears on Donahue. If you remember Donahue, oh boy. And this Jesus on a tortilla becomes a international phenomenon. But basically, she is treated as a joke. The Rubio family is treated as a joke. Let me actually find the article because it leads to something. Angelina Rubio, Jesus tortilla. So eventually, the obsession dies down. People still get the Rubio family still got pilgrims. By the time I went in 2010 to try to go see Jesus on a tortilla, I drove from Tucson to Lake Arthur and no one was home, which is a long drive. I'm like, darn it. Oh, well, it allowed me to see places of New Mexico that I had never seen before, like Artesia, like Alamogordo, which is a totally weird town, but it's awesome. Skycroft, it was a magical trip, and I read about it in my book. But by then, it turned out that the granddaughter of Mrs. Rubio had taken the cheese on a tortilla, had been lacquered to preserve it, took it to class for kindergarten or first grade, I forget, and then it breaks and it's shattered. But they kept a little shard inside their house, so it sounds like a joke, right? But it wasn't a joke. It affected a family. So I'm going to post this article now. The daughter of Mrs. Rubio, Angelina Rubio, who herself is a New Mexico state legislator from the Las Cruces region around there, because Lake Arthur's about 2 hours away from Las Cruces. Read this article. It's amazing. It's like it brings the humanity of what was a joke and brings the attention back to where it matters to New Mexico. So that's when people start realizing, like, oh, New Mexican food might be a thing. That's when the Southwestern cuisine movement that I told you folks about started, and it was huge. Again, the restaurants started naming themselves Chimayo, Hatch, whatever. They started having, or Agave Cafe. They started having they started having statues of howling coyotes, and of course Cocopelli, the fertility god of the American Southwest, or what, for some of the folks, just an ancient being. And then again, New Mexican food becomes a joke. It becomes a cliche. Angelica Rubio. Yes, Renee. Sorry, Angelina Rubio. But Angelica's cool people. Totally cool. New Mexican food, again, becomes a joke because, like, you're starting to see, like, just bad food. Like the only people who really made any good high-end New Mexican food that spread outside of New Mexico was John Sedler, who became a huge presence in Los Angeles. Now he's back in Santa Fe, actually, at I forget the name of that hotel. I just remember it was a beautiful hotel, the Drury Hotel. He had his restaurant there, the Drury Hotel. I hope he's still around at that hotel. I've heard him on speak recently, so I know he's still around. But with his restaurant ABQ, Mark Miller, of course, becomes super rich off of not even just Coyote Cafe, but also just the chili poster, the Great Chili Poster. Then he even made a sequel to it. But then it all disappears. As I said earlier, the New Mexican, I just think that there was just so many different layers of New Mexican food that Americans just really couldn't understand it. Never blew up any more than it should have. So with New Mexican food, then I would say, some people would say, oh, maybe, it's an underachiever. It's not an underachiever. It's absolutely amazing food. I mean, again, I showed all these things, not that I just bought them all up somewhere. I'd be eating some of those piñones, but they make me cough because they're pretty spicy. Peter says, you are talking about 200 words per minute. Don't slow down, Gustavo. It's all enthusiasm. Salud a todos ustedes. But again, I think it's great that New Mexican food remained in New Mexico because you could still hold on to those traditions in a way that if you released them across the country, they would, I mean, in some ways it's good that they would get transformed into other places, into other things, but why take it, I don't know. I think it's important for, especially now as, I don't know. I know that New Mexico has been afflicted a lot with COVID. I don't know what the shutdowns have been in like cities like Santa Fe or Albuquerque. I don't know if you folks can still dine in, but now more than ever, restaurants across the country, they need your support. So again, the moment I know that I could feel safe driving to New Mexico, I'm going to be eating nonstop from freaking Raton all the way down to Cruces, over to Deming. Oh, what's a great place in Deming? But they had green, it was chicken fried steak, Christmas style. I said B&J's Cafe. I went there years ago, but absolutely amazing food in Deming. Lordsburg, you got to catch up. Although there is one good place in Lordsburg that sells empanadas, but the Santa Fe beer is not bad. Eloisa, oh man, hey, all these restaurants, Patricia, all these amazing restaurants closed. John Sedler's restaurant closed.
What?
Yeah. No, we loved it. We went to Eloisa. It was an amazing restaurant. It's unfortunate that it closed. So please, folks, I'm going to get to your questions a little bit, but if you take one thing from my lecture, it is this. Now more than ever, New Mexican style restaurants, all restaurants need your support, but especially the New Mexican style restaurants, because these are the traditional ones. These are the ones that are continuing this amazing tradition. And especially in Albuquerque, I mean, quick aside, the cousin of New Mexican food is going to be Colorado Mexican food. So Pueblo Mex, Dead Mex. in Denmex cuisine is endangered because Denver has grown so much that you're getting people from across the United States and they're coming in, they're saying, I don't know what style of Mexican food this is. I don't like it. So as Denver, Chicanos who grew up in Denver start assimilating more and more because it comes with every generation, that style of cuisine starts going away. So in New Mexico, I mean, you folks have been fighting the good fight now for your food for what? 2019, 18, 17, almost 400 years. But you know, modernity messes up so many things. Rancho Chimayo, of course, a legendary restaurant. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, no, Lynn, thank you for telling. John's back in LA doing pop-ups. Tani says, if Gen Z don't learn New Mexico food ways, we are screwed. I absolutely agree. So again, I mean, I'm going to get to your questions right now, but support your New Mexican restaurants, buy New Mexican food products. I bought this at the Isleta, one of the Isleta travel stops. Absolutely amazing. Freaking, piñones. A lot of great liquor in Albuquerque. There's one called Left Turn at Albuquerque, also Santa Fe. I haven't tried the liquor in Santa Fe, but this one was bottled there. I can't go to get more of this. Again, Chimayo right there, prickly cactus jelly. And then final right here, heritage. Support New Mexican food by eating New Mexican food. Nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. So I'm now going to get to your questions. I'm going to go into this little questions bubble right there. I'm also going to be reading the comments. And Maria, are you going to be reading the questions? Because I see you pop up right now.
I pop up. Yes, let me, I have a couple of questions that people sent to me as well. So this is a good question. You kind of touched on this. Do you differentiate between New Mexico and Southern Colorado cuisine?
They're cousins. And I know there's a huge rivalry. I've gotten in trouble with New Mexicans for saying that Pueblo chilies are better than New Mexican chilies, or better than Hatch chilies to be specific. And oh my God, New Mexicans, Pueblo, the manitos, that's a nickname given to your culture. The manitos, they're your cousins. They're literally your cousins. The people, the Hispanos who settled, who went to Colorado all the way to Denver, starting in the early 1800s, they were from New Mexico. They're your cousins. They're your younger cousins. So why are you bullying them? Do not bully them when it comes to Pueblo chilies. It is a good chili, okay? It is a really, really good chili. But but you start getting different food ways. So the green chili cheeseburger of New Mexico turns into the slopper of Pueblo. And the slopper of Pueblo is just going to be the hamburger patty in green chili, or like in green chili. So more like a green chili gravy. The chili, of course, it changes from like Chimayo or Hatch into Pueblo chili. They call them Mirasol chiles up there. The burritos still mostly remain the same. So it's still a smothered burrito. The smothered burrito exists at, all across I-25. But once you start going up to Denver, you start getting other traditions. Another tradition of Denver is you get your chile rellenos, which of course are huge in New Mexico. But in Denver, they're wrapped in wontons and fried. Like, you're all cousins, though. You're all related. What binds you all together? Chili.
We're all connected. Have you ever experienced the food of the Taos region? Is one of the questions.
Taos is good. I've not been there as much, to be honest with you. I'd rather be going to Chimayo. I'd rather be going to Española. I like, when it comes to Taos, and sorry to say this, with Santa Fe, a lot of that food is just, I don't know. It doesn't have, I find it more food for tourists or people who are not Hispanos, more people who moved in from the state. And nothing against you folks, God bless you folks. But if you're going to Española, you're going to Chimayo, you're going to Socorro, you're going to even Raton, although Raton's more Colorado than it is New Mexico at that point. But it's just food for a different audience. That said, Taos, hey, if you want to trip out, that's awesome. I'll just go pray to El Santo Niño de Atocha and Chimayo right here.
So I had one question that was sent to me by email, and this was from Spencer. And he said, my mom is a gabacha from the Gila River, so my childhood was enchiladas at least once a week. And by enchiladas, I mean stacked ground beef, onion, and cheese between each layer, tons of red chili, and a fried egg on top. Growing up in the OC, back when you could still just diss it as Okie country, I thought that fried egg was some kind of shameful yet delicious Anglo flourish. But then I moved here to Santa Fe and discovered that it's done here. I practically wept for joy. I've never once had an enchilada this way outside of New Mexico, and it's a crying shame. Why doesn't the rest of the world do this? And that fried egg can quell the fear and loathing in many a man's heart. Thank you, and miss you from the weekly days.
That's cool. Thank you so much. Again, these are traditions that just, and by the way, folks, I put my email in case I don't get to your questions. Please send me your email or email me there and go from there. Again, it's a style of food that just didn't travel. Like, and well, enchiladas, most Americans think of enchiladas, rolled corn tortillas, then baked with cheese on top of it and sour cream. That's more Tex-Mex style. In Arizona and in New Mexico, it's the stacked, it's, you know, it's basically corn tortillas, each layer, you smother some chili on it, you put some onions and your whatever meat you want, and then you go from there. Then you eat it, so it's almost stacked like a pancake. But in Michoacan, for instance, they have the enchiladas, they're folded over kind of like if it was a taco, just not rolled up, like I say a taco. And it's queso fresco inside of it, and then they put, and then the tortillas are already soaked in the chile and guajillo chile. So it's just all different styles of enchiladas. My wife does not sell New Mexico style enchiladas in her restaurant in Southern California. There used to be one New Mexican restaurant. Now it's like 1.5. There's a food truck that's not really good, and then my wife's restaurant is New Mexican inspired, but it's not like a full New Mexican style restaurant. Oh, wow. The Soledad says there's some people opening a New Mexican restaurant in Brooklyn. Damn, that means the hipsters are getting hip to it.
So another question I had that was emailed to me, and I'm a little afraid to read this because I don't know what it means, but Marty asked, can you comment on the retort, pero tienes nopal en la frente?
Yeah. It's not anything vulgar. It just means you have a cactus on your forehead. And that is a classist slur that people say to people who say you're basically a hick, you're a redneck, you're a Mexican redneck, a hillbilly. So you'll say, tiene un nopal en la frente, saying like you're basically a rural person. Like it's funny because I one time got banned from Twitter for putting that on. Again, it's not a slur, it's not racist. You know, you're saying that you're poor, you know, nopalero. Like in Mexico, we, at least in my part of my family's part of Mexico, the Zacatecas, we eat cactus all the time. I have prickly pear cactuses outside my backyard now. We love the cactus, but for the higher end culture, they've seen as something like peasant food, you know? So, and Twitter, I said to some guy like, oh God, this guy looks like he has a nopal en la frente. And they banned me. They said I was racist. I'm like, I'm not racist. I was just saying the guy was a hick. Simple as that.
Oh, I'm muted. Somebody asked, what do you like to drink with New Mexican food? Is it okay to drink a margarita?
Oh yeah. No, my wife sells margarita mix, you know, margarita mix and prickly pear margarita mix from Santa Fe Seasons. Again, they actually do really, really good stuff. Like I, you know, again, because of COVID, it sucks, but I used to drive, like whenever I had the chance, I'd pick up, like I have a Yukon, so I would just fill it up with all the like stuff that my wife was gonna sell, drive to Albuquerque. It's only a 12-hour drive. That's nothing to me. Stack it up, spend a night there, or maybe spend a couple days, then come back. I hope once this damn COVID or, you know, pinche pandemic is over, I can start doing that again.
Somebody
Catherine,
wants to
really,
know if your wife does mail order.
Yeah, if you go to altabajamarket.com is the website. altabajamarket.com. So there she does sell food, you know, she does sell packages. She can mail order. You can mail order stuff, right, honey? She can figure it out. Just check it out, see what's going on. Email her, like, you know, for fans of New Mexican food, we'll do whatever we can, you know.
Alma Castro is here from Castro Cafe, and she says they aim to please the local. They aim to feed the locals. So, hello, thanks for being with us.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Go ahead and put it in the chat.
Peter's funny. Does my wife talk as fast as me? No. And my wife's like, no.
Oh, this is a good question. My family is from Rio Arriba County. We eat natillas, and I'm curious if you know the origins.
Natilla is going to be a dish straight from Spain. And natilla, there's different styles of natilla. For me, natilla, New Mexican natilla is like a pudding, right? Maria, you don't know the answer?
It's like a custard.
Yeah, like
it's
a custard.
It's like a custard.
Yeah, it's like a custard pudding. Yeah, like for instance, in Central America, you see it more like a sponge bread more than anything. But natilla, it's straight from it's straight from Spain. It's it's one of these sweets that came over with the Spaniards and spread all across Latin America. But natilla is really, really good. I mean, the other infamous but delicious dessert from New Mexico is panocha. And panocha is going to be, it's a pudding made from sprouted wheat. And it specifically refers to the brown sugar, the piloncillo, the brown sugar that's used to make this pudding. You only make it during Lent. It's absolutely amazing. But panocha in Mexico is also a very, very vulgar word for a woman's private part. So I only say this just because you could imagine the dissonance in my mind. The very first year I go to New Mexico to research my Taco USA book, I go to the restaurant that is right there in the Santuario de Chimayo. It used to be Leonoras, but it's not there anymore. Or Leonas, it's not there. I think they were going to do a new cafe. But I go in there and they say panocha 50 cents. And I'm like, okay. But it's an amazing, amazing, amazing pudding. They only make it during Lent. And I love Lenten cuisine. It just, they're dishes that remind you of how special and precious food can be. And in New Mexico, there's in some parts of the panocha pudding is only available. They only make it in New Mexico nowadays. In some parts of Mexico, brown sugar is still known as panocha, and the name comes from the Latin word for unsprouted wheat. So, but absolutely, if you ever have a chance, eat it. Yeah, Renee's there. Panocha versus natillas, two completely separate desserts. And natilla you could eat all year. Usually, though, they make it around Christmas. Panocha is only for Lent.
So somebody wants to know, Roxy wants to know, have you celebrated a feast day at any of the Pueblos?
No, my wife and I go to New Mexico, when we end up in Albuquerque, we it's a vacation for us. We're actually coming back from the South. We used to take a 2-week vacation, drive all the way to Kentucky, down to Tennessee, then come back on I-40. So we'd spend a couple of days in Albuquerque at Los Poblanos Inn, and just tired, we're just gonna relax. But I would really love to just spend a couple of weeks there, go to the fiestas of those pueblos, go to so many traditions. I'm a pretender to my knowledge of New Mexico, and I'm a nerd, and I know more than most, I would say 90% of Californians who have no ties to New Mexico. But I know I'm only scratching the surface of my knowledge of this amazing, amazing state.
Oh, here's a good one. Do you know about puchas, historically served at weddings? The real recipe calls for 30 eggs and tequesquite and piedra de lumbra as leavening agents.
No, pucas? I've never heard of it. That's amazing.
Yeah,
again, there's so many. And again, the Santa Fe Library I know has these books, the books of Erna Ferguson, the books of Fabiola Cabeza de Vaca Gilbert, other people that I'm not remembering right now. Find those historical recipes. John Sudler wrote cookbooks as well. There's another one, the Feast of Santa Fe. That was a more modern one, but that was a bestseller. I actually have it over there. I should have brought that out. Oops. But all these recipes. And if your family makes them, this is kind of a personal moment, but if your family makes these New Mexico style recipes, if you're from New Mexico, write them down. I wrote an essay about my mom. My mom passed away 2 years ago from ovarian cancer during Lent. And and so the hook for me was my favorite Lenten meal of them all is capirotada, Mexican style bread pudding. And she would make it every single year. And we never got the recipe. We were able to cobble together a recipe. Basically, by then she was already on her deathbed, but it did this great moment. Basically, the last time she ever got up from her bed was my aunt or my cousins, but they're basically as old as my mom. They were trying to they're figuring out how to make the recipe for capirotada. And then they're arguing among themselves. No, you got to put this, you got to put that. And my mom, God bless her soul, she gets on her walker with all her strength. She's mad. She is serious, terrible pain, but she's mad. She's like, no saben ustedes cómo hacerlo. You folks do not know how to make it. So she goes, she finds cloves, because you use cloves in the capirotada. She puts it there. She says how many to use, and then she goes back to her bed. And you know, so please, folks, if your family makes these new Mexican style classics, write them down. Force your family, by the way, to tell you the recipes. My mom also made this a mole from from Mexico, from Zacatecas, called asado de boda, and I was lucky enough to make her and my aunt, her oldest sister, write it down. But it was a fight. I would ask my mom or my oldest aunt, ¿cuántas tazas usa? Like, how many cups? Nomás se usa así, la tanteas. Like, you just use it, whatever. Like, you guess at it. And like, she would get mad. But we made it happen. But get those recipes, please.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. That sounds like a great workshop for the library to do, as we get together and share our stories and write down our stories with our family members. But it is so important
1000%.
to those traditions alive. How about the history of sopapillas?
Sopapillas, again, they're not introduced into New Mexico until you bring both lard and flour, because you know the Pueblo Indians did not have lard, or pork. Yeah, they didn't have pork, so they didn't have lard, and you also didn't have flour. The earliest references that I've seen to sopapillas, I mean, it was a New Mexico thing. I can tell you that much. And there's the mystery to me that I've never known is what's the ¿cómo se dice? The etymology of sopapilla, because it's a weird name, because like sopa, you know, which is soup, and then pilla, which is like I'm gonna look it up at some point. But you start seeing it definitely in recipes from the 19th century. But you know, with those those cookbooks, you know, they were happening way before that as well. Sopapilla, era of history. There it is. Yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions for Gustavo? Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
We'll follow up with links, and I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast. That sounds really fun. And this has just been a really fun evening. I want to go try some of that liquor that you were drinking, and also, you know.
It is good. I bought it years ago, so I had never tasted it, because for me, it's just so special. Piñón, Ponderosa, and Oak. I'm like, I got to open it for a special occasion. So, of course, this is a special occasion. So thank you again, Santa Fe Library. I cannot wait to do it in person one of these sooner rather than later. Really quick, folks, please, if you can, subscribe to my podcast. It's called The Times, Daily News from the LA Times. I put up the link. I'll put the link one more time right there. I put my my email as well. If you want to follow me at all, I'm going to put my website, arellano.org. I have a weekly newsletter where I gather everything I've done for the week, all the podcasts and all that. So please, again, thank you. Please appreciate your food. Now go out and eat and drink.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. And thank you all for joining us this evening. That was a really great program. And we look forward to hosting you in Santa Fe in person someday soon. So thank you, and have a good evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.